Hey VC, what's up? It's me, yours truly. I am back to post a quick video here. This is actually going to be a video response to Mean Mr. Mayo, his record organizing thread. I think he recently went through and reorganized his collection, and I believe he put everything in alphabetical order and kind of took the time to do all of that and just kind of threw it out as a thread, you know, how do you organize your records, and you know, what do you think about this and that and all that good stuff. So it's definitely a question that's popped up a number of times in the VC over the years, and it's always kind of a fun one to come back to and talk about and all that good stuff. So here you go, man. Here's my quick response to that. I do keep everything in my collection. I do organize A through Z, and then within each artist I put things in chronological order, you know, going from their earliest works up to their later pieces. I think the one place I start to get a little wacky in my organization, if you will, is when it comes to separating out stuff into genres, which is something, genres and individual artists is something I do a lot. And I know in the past people have said stuff like, you know, they don't separate their stuff out into genres because to them it's really just, it's just good music, period. So they don't separate things out. Or they might say, or I've heard, I should say in the past, well, what if you have a group that fits into all these different genres? I have no idea which genre to put them in. You know, that type of thing. Which are all completely and totally valid points. You know, my philosophy on organizing your collection, period, is setting up your collection in a way that you can find, or you can find whatever you want as soon as you want to find it, and you know what you have, plain and simple. I think if you can do those two things with the way your collection is organized, then in my opinion, you're organized and it's working for you, and run with it. So, but me personally, like I said, I dive well into breaking stuff out into genres and individual artists, and it can kind of differ for section to section. So let me just kind of go through and point out some of my weirdness on some of the different sections here. Like, for example, one really general thing that I did here the other day when I reorganized this section up here was I thought, let me kind of do like a little cool, you know, music over time type thing where, you know, jazz and blues, which obviously brought about classic rock in my opinion, which, you know, then kind of pulled in the psych and prog and all that stuff. So just kind of organize this as like a, you know, a timeline of music, so to speak. Again, just very general. I didn't get that much detail into that, but anyway, more specifically of how I generally organize things. Like, for example, these three stacks, or rows I should say, are my jazz section. Now, my general jazz section starts right here where it says jazz, and you start here with you know, Armstrong, and then you go all the way through to you know, Sonny Rollins and Grover Washington and a bunch of different stuff there. So it's kind of your basic A through Z. Now, in front of the jazz section, you see all these individual artists. So one of the things that I'll do sometimes in different sections is I'll kind of highlight some individual artists by pulling them out and putting them in their own personal name category right before the section that they're in. Now, there's not necessarily a ton of rhyme or reason to this. Number one, I think I do it because it gives my collection a little more of a record store feel, which I love. Number two, these are typically artists that I listen to more because I usually will not pull out an individual artist unless I have at least 5 of their albums. So if I'm buying that many albums of an artist, it's obviously one that I like and listen to. So this makes it easier to find. And again, it's just kind of fun. I just kind of like having my collection that way, of being able to think, oh, I really want to spend some more on Nat Coleman, instead of going and digging through stacks and stacks and stacks and then finding, you know, or Nat Coleman or whatever, or Grant Green or whatever. You know, it's just kind of like I just come right over here, or Net, everything's in chronological order, and pull exactly what I want. So I will do that within a genre sometimes just by pulling out these individual artists. Now, I'll get even a little more in detail and wacky, if you will. Like, this is all my Coltrane stuff right here. And since I have quite a bit of his stuff, I actually saw this at a record store one time where they had the Coltrane section separated out by labels. So I went ahead and did the same thing myself. Coltrane on Atlantic, and Coltrane on Prestige, and on down the line, Impulse, and so forth. And then it's just kind of various over here with different labels and so forth, including that awesome VCLT that I received there. Thank you very much. And so yeah, sometimes I'll get even a little more wacky with the dividing by doing something like that. But again, I just find that, number one, I love the setup of that, and it just makes things so much easier to find. Because again, if I'm dealing with an artist that's not in one of my separate out sections, instead of having just a general jazz section that all looks like this, and having to dig through 3 different stacks, so to speak, I mean, you get an idea if there's an alphabetical order where, A's are here, Z's are there, or whatever. But just in general, I've limited to just having to search through really quick right here to find, whatever jazz I might want to find and pull out. So that's one of the kind of wacky things that I do. So when you kind of come over to the blues section, that's where this starts. I haven't separated out any of the blues artists yet, but I probably will do R.L. Burnside and Muddy Waters pretty soon, because I've acquired quite a bit of their stuff. But then the blues goes through here, and the classic rock starts off with Jimi Hendrix. So this is all Jimmy's individual stuff, as well as my little marker to put stuff back in. Then of course the Rolling Stones. Then we continue here with the Who, Zeppelin, and then general A through Z classic rock kicks in. So same principle over here too. Bands that have a number of records by, or bands you tend to listen to, artists you listen to most often, separate them out. Oh, I want to hear Led Zeppelin 3. Boom, very easy to find, just like that. And then going into Psych and Prog over here. So that's one thing I do to kind of organize. Now, when I keep talking about my, me separating out genres and so forth, well, this will kind of come in a little bit later anyway throughout this video, but, even going to some of the genres that I make up. Classic rock, in most cases, which I think I've found with most people in the VC, it might be stuff like Boston, okay? Or, let's say, Blue Cheer right there, Bad Company, and so forth. Well, a lot of these artists, I'm sure people would consider they just go in your rock section. Or maybe a little more specifically, they go in your 70s rock section. But to me, classic rock is a lot different than just rock music from the 70s. And, totally my opinion, totally just kind of how I feel it and how I take it in. So I separate out my classic rock from just rock music. Now going down here, this is my 90s and 2000s. Okay, so basic kind of A through Z. But again, one other thing I'll do to start separating things out, as you can see right here, this label starts with ladies of the 90s and 2000s. So I will go through sometimes and separate out the female artists from the other artists in that particular category to set up a different genre. So again, if I want to listen to Dido, or I'm in the mood for Alanis Morissette or something like that, I'm not, this isn't the potential area to look and dig to pull out a record. I know Alanis Morissette, boom, right there, ladies of the 90s, I can go right to this section right here and pull her out just like that. Sarah McLachlan, Alanis Morissette, right there. So that's something else that I kind of do that's a little bit wacky. Now let me continue to talk about this genre difference in things. Again, my next section here is grunge and hard alternative. And again, I'm sure some people have some of that just in their just rock section in general. But to me, there is a difference between just 90s and 2000s. And then when I think about stuff like Creed, I consider that hard alternative. When I think about Korn, I don't consider them metal. I consider them hard alternative. What other type of things? Soundgarden's in there, Pearl Jam, Nirvana. I mean, all that is falling in the grunge and hard alternative section. So I can get pretty darn particular about, kind of how I separate things out like that. And one of the main reasons why is because when I listen to music myself, It's not always where I immediately go to an artist and I'm craving to listen. Sometimes I just get in a mode of, I want to listen to I'm just in a jazz mode for whatever the case may be. I don't want to have to come over and start looking through my records and say, okay, jazz, what I want to listen to, nothing in particular. So I have to flip and see, okay, there's a Lee Morgan, but then there's Metallica, then there's Megadeth, and then there's, I don't know, what any other band that has M in the name or whatever else. And then there's so like having jazz album, rock, easy listening, blues, soul, jazz, like to have my records sitting on the shelf like that would absolutely drive me crazy. Because this way, when I want to listen to jazz, I come right over here. I'm in a jazz mode. I don't know what I want to listen to, but boom, I'm flipping in this section right here, and I can stay right here for, however long that jazz spell goes along. So the idea of my Anvil and my Anthrax and my ABBA, and even guys kind of like Bananarama all being right there almost next to each other on the same shelf just drives me crazy. I would not be able to do that. So that kind of gives you an idea of how I set things up, as well as kind of why I do things that way. So coming right over here, this is where I keep all my R&B. Kind of same thing. I tend to separate out my R&B from other sections. Now, you only have so much room. I mean, so like for example, my rap and hip hop is down here. So the way I rearranged the shelves, I kind of had to put that over here. Before, my rap and hip hop was right here with the R&B section. But like I said, I've kind of rearranged things around with the stereo and a few other stuff. But anyway, so again, 60s, 70s R&B goes A through Z, just like that. Right over to 80s R&B, which goes A through Z, and then again, R&B ladies of the 80s. So then those are the female 80s R&B artists. And then 90s and 2000s R&B. So again, if I started getting enough of the 90s and 2000s R&B where I could break out, the female artists, I'll do a separate section for that. And then over here to the main shelf, and this is where you'll really see some of the splitting of genres and so forth. You have soundtracks here which go A through Z, and then you have 60s right here. And then you can start with the 70s. 70s you have A through L. Then as you continue to go down the line, 70s M through Z. So you take your Z all the way down through this shelf. So you see here we have Warren Zevon there. And then the next section is 70s soft rock. So now this small section right here, that's just kind of Best of Firefall, Walter Egan, America, Ambrosia, Orleans, Exile, a lot of different stuff like that. It's just a lot of the soft rock stuff. And again, how these sections come about is about, I don't know, maybe 3 or 4 months ago, I was really digging the soft rock thing. And as I was going through my collection, just kind of thinking, I really want to listen to more of that. Okay, who do I have and where is... And I'm digging through my entire 70s section, and I thought, I'm just going to make a little soft rock section. And that's a lot of times how these little sections come up. But anyway, so that's 70s soft rock. Then you have ladies of the 70s. Those are the female artists right there. So again, stuff like, I put Sonny and Cher in there. There's some Heart. Of course, Joni Mitchell, Linda Ronstadt, and all that kind of stuff. Then you go into the 80s. Same type of setup, but even some added genres here. Because you have 80s A through L right here. And then you have 80s M through Z. Continue in there. Then you have ladies of the 80s, just like the other section, all the female artists there. And then you get down here and you start getting into stuff like 80s alternative. Okay, another section for me. So over here we're talking about stuff like Dead or Alive, The Cure, Psychedelic Furs, Modern English, Soft Cell, I think I even have REM, Human League, Pet Shop Boys. I put all of that in what I consider to be 80s alternative category. And again, that's just the feel that I get from those bands, and when I think about them, that's what I think is 80s alternative. And of course, you could put those in general 80s, you could put some of those in new wave, you know, on and on, but they feel 80s alternative to me. Next section then is 80s guitar rock. So again, breaking down even further. Now, 80s guitar rock, now we're talking about Autograph, Asia, Journey, Loverboy, Night Ranger, Billy Squier, what else? Gary Moore, Triumph, things of that Y&T, all that stuff is 80s guitar rock to me. And so I think that 80s section even gives you a better idea about how specific I can get with dealing with genres. And then the last section here, these cubes here, and then right down here, these are all just random individual artists that I've pulled out from different sections. And typically when I'm pulling out an artist for these sections, it's something I'm listening to a lot and an artist that I have a number of different pieces by. Like my, that's my David Bowie section right there. That's my cameo section. Alice Cooper, The Doors, Dylan, on down the line. So again, this is just kind of a way to separate out artists from the rest of the big general stack. It's the artists I tend to go to a lot, and it just makes it a lot easier to find. Again, if I get in a Bruce Springsteen mode, I don't have to go dig through all of my 80s or whatever I'm looking for. I just know all of my Bruce is right there. Boom. Makes it really, really easy to find. And I never break out an individual artist like this without actually labeling it. So it'll never just kind of be like an open stack like this with just a bunch of individual artists side by side. If I pull out an individual artist, they're going to have their own label and tab just like that. So it works out nice too, because if I'm over here in my R&B section, which is getting a little full over here, if I start buying a lot of a certain artist and it's starting to fill up, I can just pull him out, pull her out, put her right over here, find her in a matter of 2 seconds, be able to pull out whatever I want to listen to and kind of go from there, and be able to create space for more stuff to come in a section like this is starting to fill up. So that's kind of the logic behind some of that madness there. So now, a couple other things I want to mention. Well, let me go to this section first, and I'll tell you about one more thing that I know people are going to find to be kind of stupid. But this right here is my hard rock, metal, and then hair metal section. Okay, so that's what this is right here. And then these rows of CDs right across from it are the same thing. This is my hard rock, metal, and hair metal CD section. Okay, now with these shelves over here, kind of my favorite, because these are the ones that are the most record store-ish, if you will. I actually bought them from a record store. There's not as much rhyme or reason in terms of how these artists are set up over here, as long as they're an artist that's in the category of metal or hard rock. So you can see here I have stuff mixed like the metal of Testament, but then also I have like hard rock Van Halen right here. But this is just kind of more for the display aspect, just kind of taking advantage of how neat these shelves are here with all the little tabs that I have on there. And someone asked me once, like, where do I get those from? And as you can see by some of the not so great work, those are all I just freehand them. I just kind of sit down and look at what's going on the album cover and just try to freehand it really quick. And typically if you can get the basic kind of patterns of most of the stuff, it'll first glance it'll look like a regular label, but anyway, that's kind of where that comes from. So again, a mixture of everything up here. Then down here with the ones that aren't broken up into individual artists, I have my hard rock section. So again, here we're talking about Black Country Communion. This is Robert Plant. This is Rainbow, Def Leppard, stuff like that. That's what I consider to be hard rock. Then you have the hair metal / glam metal. So now over here I'm talking about Britney Fox, Lita Ford, LA Guns, Quiet Riot, Twisted Sister, Striper, Warrant, White Snake, all that type of stuff here in the glam and hair metal. And then this over here is just kind of regular metal. I mean, Exodus, High on Fire, Machine Head, Overkill, Typo Negative, all that great stuff. And again, this is where that opinion thing comes into play, because I keep Motorhead over here. Can I see Motorhead being put into hard rock by some people? Yeah. You know, whatever reason I put it in the metal, it's just because that's the way I feel it, even though I think technically I would probably say it's a little more hard rock than metal, so to speak, but just the way I feel it. And so I do the exact same thing with CDs over here. Again, this is all, well, you just kind of see here, this is my metal section. So you have the individual artists there. And then as you kind of go along, the next section will kick off right after White Zombie. Then you go into hair metal. So you have your Cinderella, you know, Europe, Queensryche, Rat, Scorpions, all of that. And then hard rock section starts. Now we're into, you know, AC/DC and Alice Cooper and Van Halen, all that good stuff. And then hard alternatives over there. So, you know, my CDs are kind of organized really that exact same way. You know, starting down there with what, grunge and punk, and then going into classic rock, 60s, 70s, 80s, ladies of the 80s, 90s, ladies of the 90s, and then 2000s and so forth, start down the hall there. Cassettes, exact same thing, no different whatsoever. Just kind of straight across, A through Z, but it starts off with metal, then hair metal, then hard rock, then 60s, 70s, ladies, and blah, blah, blah. So they're organized the exact same way. Now, the one thing that can get kind of wacky about this, and I think a lot of people are going to think I'm very weird when it comes to this, but if you go over here to my 60s and 70s section, and you go over to, let's see here, go over to the S's, you got Bruce Springsteen, Born to Run. Okay, so that's in my 60s and 70s. And then as you go into the 80s section, which starts here, and you go down, and in the 80s you have Born to Run, then you also have Tunnel of Love. Alright, then you keep on going, you get into the 90s section, and you go over to the S's, and now you have Lucky Town, and then Ghost of Tom Joad. Now this is where the ladies of the 90s takes off and then picks up again right over here. So then you go down to the 2000s and you keep going in and you go to the S's in the 2000s, and now you have The Rising, Magic, and Working on a Dream. So my Bruce Springsteen CD collection there is in 4 different sections and the 4 different genres. Now again, that might seem extremely wacky to a lot of people. Say, well, why wouldn't you put all your Bruce Springsteen together as Bruce Springsteen? Well, because Working on a Dream and Born to Run are 2 very, very different albums, very, very different quote-unquote Bruce Springsteens, and just completely different time periods of what's going on with music. And as I mentioned before, if I'm just randomly going to pull out music, if I go to my 60s and 70s section, it's usually because I'm really wanting to hear, or for some reason I'm in that mode of digging that 60s and 70s early rock type of sound, feel, music, whatever the case may be, and all the records that fit into that category I want to have in that section. So if I don't have my 60s, 70s, and 80s all mixed together just to say all of one artist is together, I don't know, I won't get as much pleasure out of my collection that way. Because again, I'm very modey, not moody, but mody when it comes to listening to music. It's not very often where I'm getting up every single time I spend something and going, I want to go listen to this artist, I want to go listen to this artist. No, I'll listen to something, maybe a Testament song in my car, and I'll come home and go, man, I just really want to, you know, I just got like, I'm in a metal mode right now. I just really want to listen to more metal music. I want to come over here to my metal section, hard rock and metal section, and just be able just to dig right here, you know, and grab everything. I don't want to come over here to my, you know, again, whatever it might be, come over to my Black Sabbath section and start looking through my, you know, for Black Sabbath stuff, and the next thing you know, I don't know, just name somebody who starts with a B pops up, you know, like some 80s new wave stuff pops up, and then some easy listening stuff pops up, and then, okay, now here's another metal album. It's like, no, I'm in a metal mode. I want to have nothing but metal music. And so I'm very, very, again, mody, I guess if that's the word I can kind of make up. And that's another reason why I have my collection kind of organized like this. So the last section I'll show you right over here. And this over here is kind of my new just spinning section, things in rotation and stuff like that. So I've kind of rearranged things there too. But other CDs over here. And again, this is where I have my jazz CDs. So on the top row there, again, all John Coltrane, all Ornette Coleman from there to there. And then after that, it's just basic jazz A through Z after that. And then even within my jazz section, that's jazz A through Z. But then over here, this is smooth jazz A through Z. So I even separate out my smooth jazz section from my regular jazz section. So I do it all, I do like that across the board. Whew, okay, that took a lot longer than I thought. But anyway, that gives you a little insight into the madness that's Mr. Hall of Fame's Record Exchange. Let me know what you think. I think I know what a lot of people are going to think, but it works for me. So, alright, thanks for watching, VC, and we will talk to you soon, guys.